Dajahao, hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today we are continuing the read along for... I keep wanting to start with Beloved Pet Fish, but it's Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, Volume 3. And we are relatively close to the end, but that being said, because I am incapable of judging my own capabilities until I'm too deep into things, I'm a little bit stretched thin at the moment, which means that I am gonna have to cut in certain places, and the thing that kind of is potentially gonna work out the best right now is cutting these down to 2 hours a week until we're done with the novel, which I figured was best because I mentioned it last week, forgot to order Urha and didn't realize that I had not placed the order for the next volume of Urha. So it's only arriving in 3 weeks' time. I think the date said the 6th of August. So that means that if we pace this out to 2 hours a week, 2 hours a live stream, basically 2 hours a week, then we'll get there no problem and immediately be able to jump into the next volume of Urha. So sorry to front load all this information right off the bat. I hope you guys are doing well otherwise, and yeah, what are the usual drills that I go through? I feel like I have hit a complete blank. I hope the audio is okay. YouTube makes it really difficult to double check the audio these days. 3 weeks. Oh gosh, I take Amazon next day delivery for granted. Yeah, no, it is very much a thing. um, it's like 13 working days or something like that. Or that's what it said, but that's not. My math does not say that's just 13 working days, because that feels more. I'm pretty sure that's more, but we take it how we can get it. At least I can get my hands on them, which a few years back would not have been an option. So, and then luckily these are pretty well liked, because some of the other ones I have a harder time getting my hands on. For example, Exorcism, what's the full title? Legend of Exorcism. Still having a hard time getting my hands on that. And then no hope for any of the hardcovers, which is probably better for my wallet. But anyway, so we were, for anyone following along with the volume, we are on, I think, the top of page 270. Let me just double check. Yeah, we're right at the top of page 270. Okay, so just let me quickly go through this. If you're new here, hi, I'm Janae. I read anime, and I take a break on the hour just for 10 minutes to stretch my legs, get new tea, and then we resume. Usually these are 3 hours. We're cutting them down to 2 for the rest of July at the very least. And yeah, I think that's more or less it. I think we can just get started. I don't have a pillow with me. That might be a problem. We'll wait until we need the pillow, it's fine. Okay. Apart from Prince Jing, the emperor still had 2 younger sons who could ascend the throne. Muten Shah wanted the 2 younger princes to lose the emperor's favor somehow, but all of his confidants were gone, and he couldn't find anyone else to help him. Even though the 2 princes were still young and wouldn't be hard to deal with, he had no way to touch them himself. Just as he was mulling the issue over, someone came to him. Your Highness, I can help you and solve your problems. Chu Yuanyu's misty eyes peeked out from behind the dangling veil of his bamboo hat, unblinking. Right, I forgot he was coming back into play. Mutian Shah was quite shocked when he saw him. After Prince Jing had left the capital for the western border, the people residing in Qingxi Garden in his manor were each asked individually what they wanted to do. The ones who wanted to leave were allowed to leave. That was when Chu Yanye left Prince Jing's manor. He'd been with Mu Tianshao since he was a child and had nowhere else to go. He went to the Six Princes Manor to find him. Mu Tianshao had let him stay, but at that time he'd learned that he was about to get married. So even though Chu Yanye was right in front of him, he didn't get too close to him, and Chu Yanye acted like he didn't exist. The only thing he did was run right up to Mu Tianshao before he was leaving to meet his in-laws to ask if Mu Tianshao was really getting married. Mu Tianshao had nothing to hide. When he'd shoved Qianye into Prince Jing's manor, Qianye should have known then that they would never be able to openly be together before the sixth prince reached his goal. Hi! The sixth prince had promised him that he would have a place for Qianye by his side, but it wouldn't be as his lawfully wedded partner. Even if the wife's position was vacant, it still wouldn't be Qianye. Mu Tianshao desperately needed an heir. Mu Tianshao was worried that Qianye would do something outlandish, but Qianye had just stood there in a daze and then walked away crestfallen. Even now that the sixth prince's consort had officially married into the family, she didn't know there was a Chugongzi in this manor. You Yar, what are you saying? How are you going to help me? Mu Tianshao asked carefully, slightly expectant. Qianye was smart, and Mu Tianshao knew he had always had a place in Qianye's heart ever since they were children. He trusted Qianye. The previous lack of progress at Prince Jing's manor was because Prince Jing had a strange personality. It couldn't be blamed on Qianye. Qianye paused. You need someone, he said. I can be your eyes and support in the harem. For real? Mu Tianshao was ecstatic. His mother was slow-witted and wasn't favored, so if he had another form of support in the harem, that would be better than having a lot of subordinates. But you just came back from Prince Jing's. Is that possible? Mu Tianshao asked tentatively. Your Highness, you know that I have no relationship with Prince Jing. Qianye's voice was soft, tinged with aggrievement that only existed between lovers. He had grown sallow and skinny at Prince Jing's manor, not pretty at all, but now that he was at the Sixth Prince's manor, he had returned to his previously alluring self. Thank you, I appreciate the kind words. Mu Tianshao's heart thudded, and he held one of Qianye's hands. I mean, you had Prince Jing's manor before, and now you want to become an imperial concubine? Isn't that asking too much of you? Yar, if you don't want to, you must tell me. You know I'm reluctant to part with you. That feels like a lot of manipulation happening, but sure. Qianye shook his head gently. I only have one wish now, and that is to help you fulfill your goals. Please allow me. Qianye started to kneel as he said this, but Mu Tianshao stopped him. He didn't doubt Qianye's feelings for him. Otherwise, why would he have agreed to enter Prince Jing's manor in the past? If Qianye could enter the palace, Mu Tianshao's thoughts raced. Gorgeous women couldn't compare to Qianye's looks, and he would be the most beautiful in the emperor's harem as it was right now. As long as Qianye was willing to do it, Mu Tianshao felt quite confident in him. Interesting to just assume that your father is bi. I can't remember if we've had any mention of him taking on other male concubines. I don't think so. Hmm. Mu Tianshao made up his mind. He helped Jianye up, warmly saying, Come, get up. I'll leave it to you from now on then. Jianye nodded. Through the veil, Wu Tianshao couldn't see the slightly cryptic smile spreading across his face. "It's my duty to help your highness." Qianye had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Wu Tianshao was clever in placing Qianye. He took him to the palace as a bodyguard first, and Consort Zhang, as a maid who'd climbed into the emperor's bed while he was drunk, had some unique tricks. Shortly after, during the Double Ninth festival, the emperor drank a little too much and stayed nearby in Consort Zhang's Yongfu palace. The next day, there was a new person with charming looks that appeared in the palace, noble Lord Chu. Chu Yuanye is a male imperial concubine now? When Wang Shi brought up the subject lightheartedly, Liu was shell-shocked. Could there be anything more bizarre than that? In the original book, there was one top and one bottom. Liu had married the top and had a bunch of fish children, but the bottom went to be together with the top's father. Like, I have nothing against the emperor, but the age gap there does make me somewhat uncomfortable. The idea that he's married or introduced a concubine that is the same age as his son. And I know it's not like uncommon, but still. No, a male concubine was still a concubine, so he couldn't be her stepfather. Oh, Leah didn't know what to call him now anymore. Wasn't he in the manor? How did he get into the palace? Leah was stunned for a while before it occurred to him to ask the question. Leah had originally thought that when they returned, Qianye would have been living in the manor for a whole year, so Prince Jing's anger would have subsided. Then he could ask Prince Jing to let Qianye go, but he'd never expected that Qianye would become an imperial concubine. How did he do that? Wang Shi glanced at Prince Jing's expression and said, "When His Highness and the consort left the capital, a lot of people in the manor were let go. So that's what had happened. Prince Jing had allowed him to leave. Qianye hadn't escaped. We understood that Qianye didn't have any future in Prince Jing's manor, so after he was released, he would definitely go to the lover of his dreams, the Sixth Prince. So how had he ended up in the palace?" I mean, this should be clocking all the alarm bells for you, Leah, just being honest. I think there was mention before of him experimenting with a man in his youth, or maybe I'm confusing characters. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Mm. Oh, no. His Highness got drunk at the banquet, and the Sixth Prince happened to go to Consort Zhang's palace with his guards. Wang Shi said vaguely, "I heard that noble Lord Chu was bestowed the title in Yongfu Palace." Wang Shi's words were veiled, but Li had gleaned his meaning. Wasn't that just the Sixth Prince giving Qianye to the Emperor? Wu Tianshao was still the same scumbag after a whole year. Was Qianye happy about that? Oh, he probably was. After all, Qianye's logic was different from other people's. He'd entered Prince Jing's manor for the Sixth Prince too. Perhaps to Qianye there wasn't much difference between belonging to Prince Jing or belonging to the Emperor. Leo's thoughts ran wild until he noticed that the children were listening, especially Sabal, whose eyes were flickering. Leo knew that they could understand and quickly covered their ears. Getting drunk and bestowing favor on someone, Grandpa was a bit irresponsible. The children shouldn't be led astray by this. At the same time, Leo was also worried about Prince Jing. He wasn't afraid that Prince Jing had feelings for Qianye. That was impossible. But he was worried that this would affect Prince Jing's opinion of the Emperor. As far as Prince Jing was concerned, and in the eyes of many others, the emperor held deep feelings for Emperor Xiaohui. Would Prince Jing think that the emperor had failed his mother? With these thoughts in mind, Leah forgot about covering the children's ears. He held Prince Jing's hand and said, Tianqi, don't feel bad. The emperor had an entire harem. Why would Prince Jing care? He didn't want to comment on the emperor's decision. Purely to cooperate with Leah comforting him, the corners of Prince Jing's mouth pulled downward, but his eyes were full of deep affection. Leah held his arm and casually said, Don't read too much into it. Why don't we try out the merman tonight? I mean, he knows how to distract his husband, is all I'll say. He wanted to change things up so that the prince wouldn't be sad. Prince Jing's lips curved, and he nodded obediently. Okay. Is this with Wang Shi still present? I hope not. But also we have a beautiful uh, illustration here. Just look at it. After the double nine, uh, after the double ninth festival, the west had become colder. They could heat up the rooms and prepare a large tub. If he wasn't mistaken, their family would probably be setting off soon. As far as the emperor was concerned, getting drunk and bestowing favor on someone was very embarrassing for him. It was especially embarrassing that it had happened in his concubine's palace, and even more embarrassing that it was a man, one of his son's bodyguards, at that. The emperor had to assume responsibility and take the man in. The emperor was quite ashamed. He'd felt this annoyance before. There was a time he'd been drunk in Changchun Palace and favored a maid called Zhang there. And here it was again. I mean, don't you find that a little bit suspicious, Sir Emperor, that this is happening in the very maid who managed to pull that thing before with you in their place? Anyway, to make the annoyance go away, the Emperor thought about Prince Jing. When he had ordered Prince Jing to leave the capital, the Emperor had spent several hours pondering the decision. But this time his mind had been made up for quite a while now, and he made the decision quickly. Lu Rusheng, prepare a decree and have Prince Jing come back. So, Wu Tianshao's plan might end up backfiring on him. I can't quite see how yet, but I have a feeling it's gonna. Maybe I'm too hopeful. Okay. Chapter 104. Fishy back in the city. When the emperor's edict summoning Prince Jing back to the capital arrived, the children were already 6 months old. They could now eat some mushed rice in addition to drinking milk, and the peach blossom pastries they'd longed for all this time could be made into a paste and eaten too. In ancient times, though, the imperial family was usually in no hurry to wean the children off of milk and would let them drink it for as long as they wanted. The wet nurse thought it would be the same as Prince Jing's home. Leah knew that in modern times, babies could be weaned at 6 months, but local customs said that milk was nutritious, and it was fine to drink it for longer. Unexpectedly, though, the Bao refused to drink milk as soon as he hit 6 months, and would only eat paste, so he weaned himself quickly off milk. Following Dabao's leadership, Erbao, Sanbao, and Sabao soon also refused to drink milk. They stuck out their necks and clamored for rice mush, completely ignoring the wet nurse. If the wet nurse picked them up and tried to force feed them, even the fourth youngest master, with his lovely temperament and ready laughter, would get upset, turning his body around and showing the wet nurse his butt. Oh no, poor wet nurse. She probably thinks she's done something wrong. For the first time, the wet nurse felt alone. She was also having doubts about herself. Did the young masters not like her milk? Leah knew what was going on. The fish children weren't normal babies and had their own ideas. But Leah couldn't explain that to the wet nurse. He tried to comfort her anyway. When a family like Prince James hired a wet nurse, they would have to take care of her for the rest of her life. So she didn't have to worry about the future. And there was no more need for breastfeeding. Leah asked her to just look after the children, and she readily agreed. The young masters seemed very smart. Perhaps they were just different from children of normal families. At first, Prince Jing was a little worried about the children's health, but Leah reassured him over and over again that weaning at 6 months wasn't a problem, and Prince Jing, of course, believed Xiaoyu. So the issue of the children's weaning quickly passed, just like that. As soon as the Emperor's edict arrived, Prince Jing ordered their things to be packed. Since he'd been expecting this for a while, the official affairs of the western border was pretty much handled already, so Prince Jing handed over official duties to the village head. The bandits had been dealt with, and the western border was now peaceful. As far as the imperial guards that the Emperor sent to protect Prince Jing, as for them, Prince Jing asked them to stay in the western border for a bit to help the village head. He had also trained a group of young soldiers, and he handed them over to the village head as well. Official affairs were progressing smoothly and with almost no issues. All that was left was to pack. Prince Jing was still unmarried before he came to the western border and brought his boyfriend, Li Gongzi, along, but now he was returning with his wife and 4 young masters. It wasn't just the number of people that had changed, there was multiple times more luggage than before. The children's clothes, toys, and diapers took up several carriages alone. They had to bring along the wet nurse and the other caretakers as well. There were also several physicians that had come with them to the western border, and the children's teachers that Prince Jing had hired back in the capital, who he was responsible for bringing back. Leah had married Prince Jing in Luofeng village and had his fish children here. The residence in Luofeng village held immense significance to him, like another home. He was reluctant to part with it, and after making his rounds, he wanted to bring everything he saw. Of course. Um, there was something I wanted to mention. What was it? Nope, can't remember. Oh, I have forgotten. What is the amount of time that he's now able to stay a human? Because I feel like that's probably going to factor into their traveling time as well. Fish tank, crystal bottle, and all the fish plushies had to be brought along. He also wanted to bring the 2 ducks they were raising in the yard. These 2 ducks were the fluffy ducklings he'd brought back from the duck farm, which had since grown into fat ducks. Leah had said that the ducks would get ugly once they were grown up, but he secretly liked them a lot. Sabao, who'd watched the ducks grow up and get ugly, also liked them. Leah liked to eat the roast duck, but he had never thought about roasting these ducks. Wangxi followed Leah around and wrote down everything he wanted to bring. When he saw Leah hesitate, he smiled and said, "Consort, please rethink this. The ducks would be difficult to bring along." "I really can't." Leah was a little reluctant. "But if they're left behind, nobody will take care of them. The servants in this manor have been hired by the village head, so there won't be anyone else living here." Wangxi said, "There will be some servants left behind who can feed them on time and take care of them." But Leah knew what Wangxi meant and knew that this was normal, but if the ducks were left behind, he wouldn't get to see them again. Prince Jing was destined to become emperor, and he knew this year they'd spent at the western border was just part of Prince Jing's journey to the throne. When they returned to the capital this time, Prince Jing would definitely show his brilliance, so he and Prince Jing would never be able to set foot on the western border again. "Wang Gong, we really can't take them back. Aren't we bringing the fish too? Ducks don't take up too much space, and they can walk on their own, so it should be fine as long as we bring enough food, right?" "You want them to walk all the way to the capital?" "Leah, I feel like you're not thinking this through." Leah kept thinking they should be able to find somewhere in the carriages to squeeze the ducks in. Wang Gonggong thought, how could bringing fish and bringing ducks be the same? Isn't it too crazy to drive two ducks from the western border to the capital? I appreciate that he's attached to his pets. Wang Shi's lips twitched. They may not survive the difficult journey. Leah kept fighting for the ducks. Prince Jing, who could see him feeling troubled from a distance away, came over and held Leah's hand while glaring at Wang Shi reproachfully. A chill went down Wang Shi's spine as he immediately changed his tune. Yes, we can probably bring them. I'll go make arrangements to bring these two ducks along. Also, can we just give a moment to appreciate Li Ye, who is a fish, keeping pets that could eat him? Most on-brand thing I've heard of him forever. My goodness. Um, oh, 24 hours, thank you. That's at least a decent amount of time. Okay. Jing nodded, satisfied. He didn't necessarily want to blame Wang Shi. Wang Shi's logic was sound, but he knew that this home meant something different to Li Ye. When they left the capital, Xia Ye didn't have many objections because he didn't have a proper title yet. Prince Jing's manor in the capital was more like a simple residence to Xia Ye. But they'd gotten married and had children here, so Xia Ye was the other master of this residence. He could obviously decide what to bring and what to leave behind. Just do what the consort wants, Prince Jing signaled with his eyes. Wang Shi nodded quickly, thinking that he'd probably just been confused earlier. How could he try and persuade Li Gongzi to change his mind? Li Gongzi was the consort and his master. He should fully support what his master wanted to do. I mean, that's a fair concern, Wang Shi. I understand why you tried. Please give me a chance, consort, he said respectfully. I'll definitely complete the job. Leah didn't know what Prince Jing had hinted to Wang Shi, but since Wang Shi had agreed to take the ducks with them, he was happy beyond belief. Then I'll leave it to you, Wang Gonggong, he said. Wang Shi hurriedly replied, You're welcome, then rushed out to get things ready. He found a properly sized duck cage and asked the servants accompanying them if any of them knew how to take care of ducks. Since ducks couldn't stay in the carriage for too long, he had to prepare another cart and put the duck cage there. It seemed like it wasn't impossible to bring the ducks after all. They just needed to be transported correctly. After that, no matter what Leah wanted to bring, Wang Shi simply nodded and took care of it. Poor thing. On the day of departure, Leah held his children and felt a little embarrassed as he stared at the line of carriages behind him. It seemed like he'd emptied out the entire manor. Yeah, maybe just be a little bit more considerate of poor Wang Shi in the future. Prince Jing smiled and squeezed his hand to tell him it's all right, then gave him a note. Another note? All right. Consort Ye was used to it by now. He took it to see what Prince Jing wanted to say. This time, what Prince Jing wanted to say was Xiaoyu's dowry. I haven't said it yet, the stream, so let's say it now. I love Prince Jing. Leah's face instantly turned red. Dowry, my ass. The carriage Leah rode on the way here had been very spacious, but Prince Jing made the carriage even bigger this time. Originally, Wang Shi, the wet nurse, and the 4 children were supposed to be in a different carriage, but Leah insisted on keeping the children with him, unbothered by their crying. The fish children also wanted to stay near their fish father, so Prince Jing smiled and agreed. However, he didn't want Leah and the wet nurse to stay together for a long period of time in the same carriage, so he gave up his horse and got into the carriage with Leah to help him look after the children. The wet nurse was left hung out to dry, and she thought it was somewhat hard to believe. She quietly told Wang Shi about this, and he chuckled and said, There's nothing strange about that. That's how Prince Jing spoils the consorts. and the 4 young masters. You're new, so you don't know yet, but there'll be many more incidences like this. Good to prepare her in advance. The witness fully believed Wang Gong's words. They set off with no issues, but after about half a mile, Wang Shi suddenly called for the carriage to stop and asked Li Ye and Prince Jing to look outside. Prince Jing opened the curtain of the carriage to see the citizens of the western border kneeling. The village head explained to Prince Jing that when the citizens heard he was returning to the capital, they wanted to come to send him off. Prince Jing got rid of the bandits, exterminated the locusts, and helped the people flourish. The way they showed their thanks was very simple. They put all the good things they had, food or objects, into bamboo baskets to offer to Prince Jing and his consort. They do not have space. They do not have any more space. Wang Hongkong has already organized all the carriages in the land. Gonna be a disaster. Just an entire parade of 50 carriages, one after the other. And that's what I'm envisioning, yes. The old woman that Prince Jing saved was there in the crowd, holding her grandson, kowtowing non-stop, and the baby Leah had ordered the guards to retrieve from the bandits was also there. The baby's parents had later been found by the guards, and now they'd brought the baby over to see them. Leah's eyes were a little teary. He didn't know what he should say. Without saying a word, he waved to them just like he had on his wedding day. The people all loudly shouted, "We wish the prince and his consort peace and safety." The citizens were overly enthusiastic and gave them gifts like chickens, ducks, pigs, and sheep. They couldn't take all of it with them, so Prince Jing asked Leah to take care of it. After giving it some thought, Leah ordered Wang Shi to keep 2 red eggs and a roast duck as a souvenir. He knew the citizens didn't have it easy, so he persuaded them to take everything else back. Thank goodness. I'm sure Wang Gongong was utterly relieved. The citizens sent them off again, and it was 2 hours before Prince Jing and Leah actually managed to leave Luofeng village. As Leah watched the people turn into small black dots in the distance, he thought to himself that if he had the opportunity in the future, he was going to do more for these lovely people. Prince Jing and the group had been in no hurry when they left the capital, and they were the same going back. They slowed down even more since the children were with them now, and Leah even developed a mood for seeing the sights. Just like on the way there, every time they passed a town, Prince Jing would change up their diets and take Leah to try local foods. When they were wandering around an unfamiliar town, he would grab Leah's hand tightly, as if he was afraid Leah would suddenly fly away. Leah felt both moved and amused when he thought about the man who would take care of the children with him and always protect him, despite believing Leah was a carp spirit. Who said men never continue to cherish their partner after marriage? Prince Jing, at least, treated him better and better. The moment they arrived at the capital, the fish scamming system finally showed its presence with a new mission. It had been so long that Leah had almost forgotten it existed. Please note, the main quest line, share the country with the Tyrant, has begun. Oh my goodness. User, please view it promptly to obtain the mission information. Leah was excited when the mission finally appeared, but he calmed down quickly. Share the country? Did that mean what he thought it did? The fish scamming system's previous missions were mainly about nurturing their relationship, but this last one was a bit too difficult. Prince Jing could only think of the country after he ascended to the throne, which also meant that completing this mission would have to wait until the fight for the throne was decided in Prince Jing's favor. He had been able to complete all the weird quests he'd gotten before, though, so it would be the same this time, right? Share the country with the Tyrant. That was different from simple lovey-dovey behavior. No typical emperor or empress would say such a thing. Leah glanced at the man holding his hand, and he wondered if this man really loved him enough to share the country with him. I mean, Have we met Prince Jing? Honestly. A country was different from everything else. It was something that many would give up family or love for. But Liya had promised to trust Prince Jing. He tried to trust that they could finish this last mission with no issue. When they arrived in the capital, they had to enter the palace immediately to greet the emperor, even though they were all extremely tired. Prince Jing took Liya with him, and they each held two children. Wang Shi quickly ran to Tianjin Palace to deliver the message, and after receiving the emperor's orders, Lu Sheng waited for them outside the palace. As soon as he saw Prince Jing's family from a distance, he immediately rushed forward to greet them. Liu Sheng had never seen Liu before, so he bowed to him politely. When he saw Erbao and Sanbao in Liu's arms, as well as Dabao and Sibao in Prince Jing's arms, he couldn't help but smile. They really looked alike, especially the little heir. He looked like he was made from the same mold as Prince Jing when he was a baby. Head Eunuch Luo wanted to say a few more things, but the emperor couldn't wait anymore and walked out himself, calling out loudly, "Where's Prince Jing?" This emperor is something else. But before he could even finish speaking, the emperor stopped in his tracks. Prince Jing was standing a few feet away, with a delicate, pretty young man cuddled up next to him, and they were both holding two children in their arms. When Prince Jing saw the emperor, he pulled Leah down to kneel in greeting. The emperor ordered head eunuch Luo to help them up and stared at Prince Jing for a while, before saying emotionally, "You've gotten more tanned, and you've bulked up." The emperor then turned to look at Leah next to Prince Jing. This young man's luminous eyes and rosy lips were very pleasing to the eye, he thought. He had already guessed who the young man was, so he smiled and asked, "You're Liu?" Prince Jing gently squeezed Leah's hand under their sleeves, and Leah understood. He and the emperor weren't truly strangers, so he boldly called out, "Royal father!" Oh my word. Oh, I mean, he's not wrong, but also the emperor was delighted, as if he'd gained another son. When he looked at the two in front of him, he felt they matched each other well in both appearance and temperament, making them a very suitable couple. He nodded kindly. Prince Jing was holding Dabao and Sabao. Leah had already told the babies on their way there, so Dabao knew that the man wearing the strange bright yellow clothes was his grandpa. But Dabao still didn't know how to talk, and he usually just drooled when he opened his mouth. Dabao was afraid of embarrassing himself, so he didn't open his mouth and instead copied the adults by putting his fists together and stretching them out to his grandpa. Stop. Dabao must be protected at all costs. I'm sure I'll feel the same way about the other three as well. But just the personalities of these four babies. My goodness. Um, the Emperor's gaze landed on Dabao immediately and he paused. After a while, he smiled and said, "Tianchu, this child looks just like you when you were a child. A little Chubbs." Prince Jing, who'd been looking for little Chubbs for a long time, was stunned to hear this. Neither Wang Shi, Ye Qingyan, nor anyone else had ever dared to call Prince Jing little Chubbs. Only the Emperor was so fearless. Prince Jing suddenly realized, was the little Chubbs Leo was talking about that one time actually himself? I had forgotten that was a puzzle piece that he did not have. Oh my goodness. Oh no. That was kind of great. Chapter 105. Fish Children Meeting the Emperor. The Emperor was right in front of them, so Prince Jing couldn't ask Leo straight away. He decided to put it aside for now. The Emperor was overjoyed when he saw Dabao, just as Leo expected. He glanced at Prince Jing and then stepped forward with Erbao and Sanbao as well. When the Emperor saw the other two chubby children, he was ecstatic. Erba and Sanbao weren't as concerned with their image as Daba was, so when they saw their grandpa, they opened their mouths to shout but ended up just drooling a lot. Erba pointed to the dragon on the emperor's clothes, then smiled and clapped his hands. He'd seen this before. Ah, snake, he doesn't say, but that's what they think. The sound was clear and crisp, very healthy. The emperor patted the chubby little boy's head in surprise. Sunbow, not to be outdone, yelled back out loud, "Ah, a centipede!" The amount of things they think they are communicating. The emperor patted the other chubby little boy's head too, amused. Dabao was sulking on his own. Erbao and Sunbao were dummies. That was a dragon. Fishfather had told him before that the long thing on Grandpa's clothes was a dragon. "Stop talking, listen to me." But as soon as Dabao opened his mouth, drool flew out. This is getting messy. Dabao decided being embarrassed was fine, so he strained until his face was red to force out a "pa." Dabao wanted to cover his face after he heard his own voice. What was going on? He was the first one to say "daddy" clearly, so why was he saying "grandpa" all weird? Being human was too hard. I want to be a fish again. Poor thing. The emperor had heard him, and he teased Dabao by asking, "Dabao, what are you trying to say?" Dabao did his best and clenched his little fists. "Grandpa?" The emperor thought he must have heard incorrectly. Leo smiled and confirmed, "Royal father, he's calling for you. Please forgive me. At home, no one on the western border. No, on the western border, we always call you Grandpa in front of him." The emperor had never had a grandson who'd called him Grandpa before. They all always called him the proper royal grandfather. But when Prince Jing's little heir suddenly called him Grandpa, even though he stuttered and didn't pronounce it quite right, the emperor was so happy that his beard almost stood on end. Oh, I just appreciate how ridiculously fun this book is. Like, it's so silly, but it's so nice. This baby could call him Grandpa even though he was only 10 months old. He would definitely be a smart child in the future. Anyway, he was his grandson. It was normal for him to call him Grandpa. Wasn't that what ordinary families did? The position of emperor was a very high one to be in, but he also wanted to experience the simple joys of a family. The imperial family had a saying, "Embrace your grandson, but not your son." The emperor had been talking about Prince Jing for months now, and Prince Jing was finally back, but the emperor could only say a few things to him. He couldn't be overly affectionate. But the little grandson was different. Since he was from a later generation, the emperor could embrace him however he wanted. That's really sad, because it makes sense that the emperor doesn't feel it's safe to show favoritism lest, you know, it cause unnecessary issues. Um, or not even favoritism, but just an act of kindness being misconstrued as favoritism. So yeah, it's very depressing to think he feels comfortable showing the affection that he wants to show his son to his grandson, but obviously not the other way around. Mm. The emperor, who forgot his son now that his grandson was here, lifted Dabao up. Little Sheng and Prince Jing quickly helped the emperor. Dabao was well taken care of, and he was a little heavy. The emperor used quite a bit of strength and held Dabao firmly. After catching his breath, he turned around and smiled at Prince Jing, saying, "Little Chubbs is quite heavy." Prince Jing felt a bit bewildered. The emperor held Dabao in his embrace, and Dabao was obedient and didn't cry. His little chubby arms went around the emperor's neck, and the grandpa grandson pairing seemed very close. Leo was afraid the emperor would get tired, so he wanted to take Dabao back, but the emperor waved him away. Dabao was a little heavy, but the emperor enjoyed the fact that Dabao wasn't afraid of him. After all, when his other grandsons saw him, they were like mice that had seen a cat. They weren't as close to him as the grandsons from Prince Jing's family. Not only did the emperor not allow anyone to take the bow away, but he also waved Leah over. Leah understood. He walked over with Erbao and Sanbao. The emperor made Lu Sheng bring each children over to sit on his lap. What about poor Sabal? He has not even been mentioned once. I mean, not once, but like, you know what I mean. Royal father, this is too heavy. Leo protested, a bit embarrassed. The emperor's childishness started showing, and he shushed Leo. Let them sit here for a bit. Since I'm holding the bow, the others will be upset if I don't hold them too. At least he's being fair. Leo was speechless. He didn't notice the other children getting unhappy. Was the emperor trying to start something? The emperor counted the little butts in his lap and found he was missing one. What about Sabal? Thank you. Sabal was sleeping soundly in Prince Jing's arms. He was tired from all the travelling, and the fish children had a very good habit of not waking up once they were asleep. This meeting with the emperor didn't even bother him. Prince Jing put Sabal in the emperor's arms too, after the emperor kept urging him to. Sabal, who was sleeping very well, was welcomed by his brothers Erbao and Sanbao, and they started waving their little arms and legs in a dance, patting Sabal awake. Sabal sat up, rubbed his eyes, and saw the emperor holding him. Who is this? Sabal ate his hands and tried to recall. His fish father had told him that they were going to see Grandpa, but Sabal got sleepy and took a little nap. So, was this Grandpa? Ah, Grandpa. In his excitement, Sabal accidentally spit out his drool and nearly choked on his saliva. Emperor almost gave himself an internal injury holding back his laughter. As soon as Sabal opened his eyes, the Emperor could tell that he looked a lot like Leah. If he had had any doubts that Leah had really given birth to the children before, it was gone the moment he saw them. Children resemble their parents. This was an unchanging truth. The Emperor had a bunch of stuff he wanted to tell Prince Jing, but he forgot it all as soon as the children landed in his lap. He became completely engrossed in playing with them. Lu Sheng had to remind him quietly several times before he remembered that Prince Jing's family had come to see him first thing when they arrived in the capital. Upon closer inspection, Prince Jing and Leah did both look exhausted. The Emperor comforted them a bit, then told them they could go get some rest and leave the children with him. But then he looked around and realized that there was no place suitable in the palace for children that small. The children had been forced to travel with adults, so they must have been even more tired. The emperor knew that he couldn't keep them for any longer. He smiled and said, "Rest for 3 days. Come to the palace afterward and burn some incense for your royal mother so she can see the children. I think she would be very happy." Aww. Watch, I am convinced the emperor is gonna like designate a room for the children to have as a nursery so that he has a reason to have them visit more often. Maybe that would be too much favoritism, but still. As the emperor spoke, he looked up at Prince Jing's family and felt a little choked up. If Emperor Xiaohui was still here and the eldest and fourth prince were still alive with Prince Jing, the eldest and fourth prince would have had children by now too. How lovely that would have been. The emperor's smile faded a little. Go on then. Prince Jing nodded and led Leah and the children away. When they left the palace, Prince Jing patted Leah's hand. The emperor's expression hadn't looked too great at the end, so he was afraid Leah would misunderstand. "I know," Leah said softly. "I won't take it the wrong way." The emperor had clearly made himself sad by mentioning Emperor Xiaohui. A warm, dry hand held Prince Jing's hand in return. Tianchi, don't be sad. Princeling stared at Leah, and his heart felt like a warm current was flowing through it. Shaya often told him to not be sad. Truth be told, Princeling was used to it by now, so he wasn't sad. But every time Leah tried to comfort him and care for him, Princeling felt immensely happy. Looking down, he saw that all the children were asleep. Sabao rolled over, drooling on Princeling. It was late when they got back to the manor. Angshi had already ordered the servants to clean up the rooms and make the beds. The room was just as it had been when they'd left, except for the addition of Prince Jing's new painting of a school of carp. It signified that the master had returned. I love it. Let's just... Okay, yeah, no, we still have some time left. Prince Jing had just settled the children and the ducks when he turned around and saw Leah fall asleep on the bed. He had buried his head in the green quilt with golden edges and started breathing steadily. He was so exhausted that he hadn't even taken off the shoes on his feet. Princeling felt for him, so after a moment of thought, he exited the room quietly and brought back a warm basin of water into the room. He gently removed Leah's shoes and socks, then soaked Leah's feet in the water. During the trip from the western border, there hadn't been much time to relax other than the occasional stay at an inn. Shayu must be tired. It must have been difficult for a corpsebird to follow him around all this way. Prince Jing wiped down the top of Leah's feet and gently rubbed the soles. Leah hummed in comfort, but he didn't wake up. Prince Jing wiped his feet clean, took off his robes, and placed him under the brocade quilt. Then he took off his own clothes and snuggled in as well. Leah hadn't slept on a solid bed for a long time, and he didn't know how long he ended up sleeping for. He could now transform into a human for a whole day. For convenience, he usually transformed in the middle of the night. He could maintain human form until the midnight of the next day, then transform into a fish for a second before turning human again. It was a bit troublesome, but he was usually with Prince Jing in the middle of the night. With Prince Jing shielding him, there was nothing that could go wrong, and no need to worry about his secret being revealed during the daytime. When Leah woke up, he automatically felt his body to check. He had arms and legs, so he hadn't turned into a fish. A full day hadn't passed yet. Prince Jing was laying next to him, eyes closed and unmoving as if asleep. Leah turned around and kicked off the quilt. His feet had been in unbearable pain when he fell asleep, but they didn't hurt anymore. Not only was the pain gone, but he felt like he could go to the palace and back several times over. Was sleep a cure for foot pain? It is not. I can attest to that. I have gone to sleep with my feet paining or hurting and woken up with them still hurting. Um, what concerns me about this though is if he does fall asleep and he turns back into a fish, he could like suffocate because he's not in water. And I just don't know how, like, would he wake up and be able to like just quickly turn into human before his body goes into shock or something like that? I'm overthinking this, but I just can't help but be paranoid about potential ways that Mutian Shao could cause trouble. Okay, Leo looked at his feet and noticed that his shoes and socks had been removed. Then, when he glanced at the copper basin on the ground, he realized the reason why his feet weren't in pain anymore wasn't because of sleeping, but because someone had massaged and soaked them. Who else would do something so extreme beside Prince Jing? Lee laid back down, his face against the other person's sturdy back, smelling his familiar scent. He asked hesitantly, Tianchi? He'd only called out once when Prince Jing turned around and stared at him with eyes as deep as a dark pool. Leo clutched his chest. That scared me. You haven't slept yet? Prince Jing nodded. Why wasn't he asleep? Because of his fish, of course. It had to do with little chubs. Oh, right. Yes, yes. Prince Jing had heard Zen master Lao Kong mention that Leah had saved him from drowning when he was a child. Prince Jing couldn't actually remember much because of the high fever he developed afterwards, but he believed it. Shaya had come because of him. Though Shaya had never mentioned or admitted it, he more or less had enough evidence now. After Leah let little Chubbs slip out when he was dreaming, Prince Jing had hunted for that person for a long time, but he never found the culprit. He even got jealous of this mysterious fat man. But now that he'd learned from the Emperor that he was called Little Chubbs when he was younger, he came to a realization. No wonder he could never find the Little Chubbs. He was Little Chubbs. The Emperor Wang Shi and Ye Qingyan, knowing the nickname, was only to be expected. But how could Sha Ye be aware of it? It must be because he'd seen him when he was younger. Sha Ye had saved him. I love how he's piecing all of this together, and because of what he thinks Sha Ye is, it makes sense to him. And like, oh goodness. Jing was extremely happy to learn that his love rival was actually himself. If he'd had a tail, His Highness would probably have started waving it. But Choyu didn't know that he'd been looking for little Chubbs this entire time, so Prince Jing couldn't properly express the happiness in his heart. Choyu had made him promise in the past to not ask where he came from. Prince Jing was sure he had some sort of reason to refuse to admit that he'd saved him in the past. Alright, he decided. He wouldn't let Choyu know that little Chubbs knew everything. Tianchu, Leo called out in a soft voice, his eyes bright and beaming. Prince Jing turned around and kissed him, interlocking their fingers. Leo was walking a bit stiffly the next day. It was different from the foot pain he'd had. It was his legs that were sore this time. I wonder what that could be. Okay, we are at the end of a chapter and we're like 2 minutes away from the top of the hour, so I am quickly gonna take the 10-minute break now and then we'll be back at like, let's make it 10 past on the dot. We're gonna try our best. I will see you guys then. I just crack a little bit. Sorry about that. Um, and let's just quickly see if everything is still fine. I think I might have even left the audio on, I'm not sure. Um, okay. So we were, again, at page 295, chapter 106. Anyone who wants to follow along? Fishy bath. That could... It doesn't sound very eventful, but these titles have been misleading before, so let's see. The day after Prince Jing and Leah returned home, Ye Qingyan heard that they were back and came to personally announce good news to them. The princess of Jinju had given birth to a daughter 2 months ago, and Ye Qingyan was beside himself with joy. While Prince Jing and the group were on the road, they hadn't really been able to receive any news, so this was the first they'd heard of it. Yay, congratulations to him! I still find it so funny that Prince Jing beat him to having children. And it wasn't even a competition that Yechingen knew they were in or like could ever be in because obviously Lee is a man. Um, but yeah. Mm. Yechingen now had a daughter, and he was like a little honeybee buzzing about her non-stop. She's so tiny, and her face isn't even as large as my palm, but she's so cute. I've never seen such a cute little girl. Prince Jing thought he was noisy, but it was Yuchingen's first time being a father, and to a precious daughter at that. He had to yell about it, even if he got kicked out. Prince Jing wasn't much better in that aspect, though. He had incubated the fish eggs himself, and the day the fish children hatched, he'd been smiling all day. He wasn't any calmer than Ye Shizi. Leo, who knew the truth, laughed out loud. A contest between Prince Jing and Ye Shizi over who was the more doting father would be an uncontested draw. I kind of love it. Like, we stand both of them being equally doting. I just love the Emperor. He's met the kids for 5 minutes and it will already do anything for them. Yeah, no, I think he might be my favorite Emperor of any of the stories that we've read so far. Though actually not even read because I can't remember that I've specifically read a story that has an emperor in it. But of the C dramas that I've watched, definitely my favorite emperor. I think the only only emperor that I actually quite liked, who I felt was sometimes cruel but mostly fair, was from Sleuth of the Ming Dynasty, if I'm not misremembering. But a daughter. Leah had only interacted with his fish sons, and when he thought about a cute, well behaved little girl, like a little flower, he quite wanted one himself. Leah, you just got these four. Can we just stagger them a little bit, please? I don't even know if it's gonna be possible, but it did sound like it wasn't completely off the table. He couldn't help but touch his flat tummy. It had been a year since he'd given birth to the fish children. Since he'd been a fish when it happened, it practically had no effect on his body. After that, he and Prince Jing had done it many times. Though the one and done buff was gone, the system said that he could conceive normally, which meant that he could still have children, but he'd been on the receiving end for a year now and still hadn't received anything. So, when the chance is a bit too low, after seeing how cute the fish children were, Leo was willing to try a second time, even if it was a little difficult. Prince Jing had worked really hard last night. They'd been on the road for so long and almost no sex life to speak of, so he'd saved up a lot of energy. Would Leah get pregnant from that? I don't know if the system meant he could give birth in the normal way, as in, like, he could impregnate but not be impregnated. And in that case, it would mean no more children because he's not gonna be the one to impregnate Prince Jing. We know that much. Um, but he was a fish with a system. If he was pregnant, the system would definitely give him a notification. Like the last time when he had to choose between human form or fish form, it should happen every time he got pregnant. But he didn't hear a notification last night. It looked like the revolution was not yet achieved, and Comrade Tianchi needed to work harder. The way it's described. Um, oh, as in there's a normal chance of successful pregnancy. It's not guaranteed. Okay, okay. I mean that's more fair. What a strange idea. But then again, I mean, I'm watching ABO Desire, so it's not even like I'm not in. similar territory in a different show at the moment. Well, series at the moment. Okay. Leo looked at his husband's waist with a smoldering gaze. Ye Yan was still yapping, but Prince Jing couldn't take it anymore. He ordered Wang Shi to carry him out with two thick red envelopes. Ye Yan held the red envelopes and suddenly realized, Tian Chu, are you perhaps jealous that I have such a cute daughter? Prince Jing stared at him. I'm not jealous. Get out. When Ye Yan and the princess's daughter turned 1 month old, oh, sorry, that I read that weird. When Ye Qingyan and the princess's daughter turned 1 month old, the emperor gave her the title of Qinghe Junju. Jun, Jun, Junju. Yeah, that's the closest pronunciation I can figure out. The emperor was quite generous with the younger generation. The little princess was still too young to visit him, so Li went over to visit Ye Qingyan and chatted with him for a bit before agreeing to bring the fish children to the little Qinghe Junju's 100-day-old celebration. Don't forget to bring Xiaoye and his little fish too, Ye Qingyan reminded him. The princess is always talking about your family's fish. I guess I'll have to clone myself somehow, Leah thought. Leah quickly looked at Prince Jing, trying to ask for help. He would need to bring his fish children and a bunch of fish plushies and turn into a real fish that day. It was definitely too much for him, so it would be best if Prince Jing could give him a bit of a hand. Prince Jing lightly coughed and turned his face away, as if he didn't see. Who asked the carp to be so eager to see the little princess? Jealousy is unbecoming of you, Prince Jing, but it's not unexpected, unfortunately. What? Leah looked sad. Everything had been fine just now, so why did Prince Jing suddenly get all upset? Ye Qingyan had just left when Luo Gonggong arrived with a plethora, sorry, my bad, of rewards in tow. The emperor couldn't give Prince Jing a sizable reward, but he liked the four children a lot, so he gave the rewards to the children instead. The list of rewards was so long that Luo Gonggong's throat nearly started smoking. That's me when I try and read. Oh my goodness. Wang Shi thoughtfully gave him a cup of tea, and Luo Gonggong took a sip before happily continuing to read. Leo stood next to Prince Jing, respectfully listening and silently speechless. Jewelry, fabrics, antiques, calligraphy, those weren't special, but there were also bows, arrows, horses. Horses that will probably, and I'm sorry to say it like that, but be too old to be practical by the time the children are old enough to ride them. I don't know. The, I don't think the emperor thought this through. Thorns weren't special, but there were bows and arrows and horses in the four books and five classics. The emperor had a clear plan for the next decade of the children's lives. Most of the rewards were given in fours, but the last one was different. The emperor gave Dabao a set of four treasures of the study and a jade ruyi, but the other children each received 2 bags of gold ingots with the words peace and auspiciousness etched onto them. The emperor was clearly giving Dabao special treatment. That hurts to already have that, and like thinking how something like that affects probably affected his own children, and yet he's not learned from it. Prince Jing smiled and looked at Wang Shi, who immediately explained to Li Yu, Consort, the eldest young master is the heir, so his reward is a little bigger. Li Yu nodded. He knew that the eldest son in ancient times held a special position, but the children wouldn't start fighting because of this, right? He recalled that back when the boys had been fish, when he'd put Sabao on his head, the other children would get jealous. Leah normally tried to pay attention to this. For example, the Bao was smarter than most babies and attracted more attention, but Prince Jing liked to hold Sabao a little more. When Leah realized that, he made sure to hold Erbao and Sunbao more often so they wouldn't feel left out. But if the gifts were different, how was he going to make the children understand why Dabao was different? If Prince Jing stayed a prince, then Dabao would inherit the title of prince. If Prince Jing ascended to the throne in the future, then Dabao would most likely become the crown prince. One little difference could change everything. This was probably the most difficult thing for a normal princess to accept. Yeah. That's the one thing when it was revealed there were four children where I was like, this. It's not great because there will always in these kinds of situations be the one who is chosen as the heir. Even though technically these are quadruplets, so there isn't really a first. Mm. Oh, sorry. Since Liu had given birth to the fish children, Di or Shu wasn't a consideration, only their age. But truthfully, age was a bit confusing too because Liu had laid the eggs in his sleep and didn't know which baby's egg came out first. Prince Jing had determined their ages when they hatched, but if they went by the order their eggs were laid in, Dabao might not be the actual eldest son. Would the other children be unhappy because of that? Leah carefully observed them for 2 days. The fish children ate and slept as normal. There was no unhappiness to speak of, except on the day the gifts were given. The bar was almost covered in drool from kissing the other children, from the kisses the other children gave him. Leah concluded that the fish children were still too young to worry about it. Even if they were different from normal children and had spent some time as young fish, they still couldn't understand complex things like rights and statuses. It was better to leave such things for later and let them live a happy childhood. Their father, Prince Jing, hadn't ascended the throne yet, so there wasn't any need to worry about all that for now. Just as he was deciding to let this go, something else unexpected happened. All at once, the fish children started throwing tantrums. Leah remembered the last time they were this upset was because they were getting weaned from milk, so he was confused. The conditions in the capital were better, so shouldn't the fish children be happier? Leah himself was definitely happier. When they got back, he overheard Wang Gongong saying that Prince Jing had bought a Quan Jude, don't know, probably a area roast duck master from the western border to open another location in the capital. Wasn't that just to make him happy? Leo was very self-aware. He was waiting for Prince Jing to take him to eat roast duck. Oh, why did he suddenly stop thinking about food? Leo quickly wiped away the drool on his face. He was trying to care for his fish children. The fish children had just moved back into the manor and were doing fine. They started throwing tantrums the day after Prince Jing and Leah held them in their arms and showed them around the manor. The manor was their home. Was there something wrong with walking through your own home? After Leah gave it a lot of thought, he realized that Sabal was facing the window yelling, "Ah," as if he wanted to see something. Leah carried Sabal over. Outside the window was a corner of the huge fish pond that Prince Jing had built for him, the clear water rippling. Oh, you guys better not be thinking about trying to go for a swim, please. Ah, I want to swim. Sabal raised his chubby hand, pointing at the pond, and looked back at his fish father with tears in his eyes. Now that Sabal had expressed his desires, the other fish children started pointing to the pond as well, calling out their fish, calling out to their fish father. The bow, who was the most mature, yelled the loudest. So that's what it was. Leah finally understood why the fish children weren't happy. The children could only look at the huge pond in the manor. They couldn't swim in it. No wonder they were upset. Well, you can't say that this author doesn't throw complications Leah's way, it's just not the kind you would expect. Jane wasn't in the manor because he had some business to attend to, but Leah had an idea. He had one sheep bring a large bathtub filled with warm water. He undressed the children, put a little towel around each of them, hung a small piece of wood around their bodies, and let them swim in the water while they held the wood. When the four children got in the water and found they couldn't swim like they used to, they realized they had no tail on their butts to swim around anymore. They were incredibly sad and all started crying and wailing at once. Leah hadn't expected them to cry when they were in the water too, so he got the water in the water and stayed with them. Crowding around Leah like they were when they were young fish, the fish children felt a bit better. Leah stayed in the bathtub for a while. Something suddenly occurred to him. How could he forget the bubbles? He took a dry piece of cloth to hastily cover himself up. He had cleaned out all the servants in the room, so it was only him and his fish children. Kind of streaking, but not really, shouldn't be a problem, right? With his modesty thus preserved, Leo ran out of the bathtub and grabbed a bunch of bath beans, which were the ancient version of soap. He ground up a bath bean and dissolved it in a bamboo container, then twisted some wire to make a good sized loop. Now that he was ready, Leah ran back to the babies, dipped the wire into the soap water of the bamboo tub, puffed up his cheeks, and blew in the direction of the tub. My goodness! His efforts were rewarded. He actually blew an iridescent bubble. Wow, Fish Dad was blowing bubbles? The fish children in the bathtub immediately forgot about the no-tail problem and swarmed around, chasing the bubbles. Princeling had gone out to do business, but when he came back, he found that the door to Shahir's room was closed and the servants had gone elsewhere. Princeling opened the door to take a peek, curious, and saw the carp spirit wrapped in a cloth, running back and forth, his long, slender legs dazzling. So Leo was taking a bath with the fish children. Princeling remembered the time he played with Shahir in the bathtub before. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's quite the same, but sure. How could he miss out now? He immediately got into the bathtub with a smile. After 3 days of carefree respite in the manor, the day they'd been ordered to return to the palace came. Head Eunuch Law sent someone to Prince James's manor early in the morning to remind him. Leah put the fish children in little bright red robes and tied bibs around their necks. Each bib's color was the original color of the corresponding fish child, and there was a circle of swimming fish around the edges. He and Prince Jing changed into clothes appropriate for a prince and his consort. When they met the emperor the first time, they had just gotten back, so they didn't place too much importance on their attire. This meeting, however, was much more formal. The dragon on Prince Jing's clothing and the phoenix on Leah's were indispensable, but there was also fish embroidery on uh, onto inconspicuous places like his cuffs and collar, and the patterns were complementary. I love that Prince Jing put so much thought into Leah's outfits. Like, oh, I don't know why, it just gets me. Now, after the wedding, Leah felt that Prince Jing's expressions of affection, both openly and secretly, had improved. Though the main goal of the trip this time was to greet Emperor Xiaohui in Chengqing Palace, they still had to meet the Emperor first. However, before they set foot into Chengqing Palace, head eunuch Law came out to tell them the Emperor was currently meeting someone else inside. I'm assuming Chu Yanyu, just because things have been too good recently and we need trouble. Head Uniqlo stuck out his thumb and pinky, making a six gesture and sighed. Okay, the sixpence then. The emperor didn't expect this either. He usually enters the palace around noon, but he came early in the morning this time and even brought his consort. It seems like he's waiting for your highness. Lear gently clasped his hands together in gratitude to head Uniqlo for warning Prince Jing. Lord Shang often spoke in favor of Prince Jing, but it was inconvenient for a prince to express his thanks, so Lear thanked him in his place. As the famous saying went, a husband and a husband are one. I don't know if such a saying exists, especially in ancient times, maybe now, but definitely not in ancient times, I don't think. Lo Rusheng hurriedly said there was no need, and Li Ye quickly finished his bow. Prince Jing smiled and rubbed the top of his head. Who cared about the sixpence anyway? Li Ye and Prince Jing still carried their children into the palace. Mu Tianxiao was talking to the emperor, his voice full of joy. When I heard about such great news, I came to tell you immediately, royal father. Mu Tianxiao said with a smile. What news? I'm already weary. Leah had only heard the tail end of it, so he had no idea what the great news was. But even though the emperor had heard all of it, his reaction was much less enthusiastic than the sixpence had expected. He just furrowed his brows and stared inquiringly at the sixpence's consort beside him. The consort nodded, embarrassed, and the emperor quickly ordered head Uniqlo to bring a chair over for her to sit down and rest. But there was no chair for the sixth prince. Winston Chow was the only one left standing, and he looked a bit awkward. I'm assuming she's pregnant? Royal father, Leah called from behind. The Bao knew his grandpa now, and even though they were still far away, he opened his arms and laughed, drool falling from his mouth. Grandpa. The emperor acknowledged his response and said happily, I haven't seen him in 3 days, but it feels like the Bao is already getting better at speaking. The Bao has the emperor around his pinky, I swear. Leah couldn't believe it. He's not. The Bao isn't. Emperor, please don't get too excited. The emperor held the Bao on his lap, and Mu Tianxiao's eyes widened in disbelief. Since when was the emperor so affectionate with his grandchildren? The Bao took out a calligraphy brush from his little robes. He'd insisted on taking it with him before they left. It was one of the gifts the emperor had sent a few days ago. The Bao, you're so smart. Do you want to learn how to write? Grandpa will teach you how to hold it, the emperor said, smiling and holding the Bao's chubby little hand. Leah thought it was too tragic to look at. The Bao had to hold the brush with both hands, and it was almost as large as he was. How was he going to write? But if the emperor thought he could, then so be it. He gave the Bao some pointers with great enthusiasm. The Bao put on his serious face and listened carefully. When the Bao scribbled away again, the emperor's smile practically split his face in half. Leo was convinced that the emperor had fallen under the Bao's spell. It was inconvenient for the emperor to hold the other children at the same time, but he held Erbao and Sanbao's tender little hands and got covered with Sibao's happy drool, laughing heartily. The sixth prince stared at the Bao in the emperor's arms with a sinister gaze, and he couldn't help but say, Royal father, Suyin is also. If she's pregnant, then take good care of her, the emperor said mildly, without looking up. He was still playing with the Bao. You don't have to come and tell me yourself. I will send the imperial physician to check her pulse every day. Again, I like the emperor, but he is not thinking about the potential wrath that he's bringing onto not only Prince Jing and Liya, but also indirectly the children because of how he's clearly favoring them while in front of other, like outsiders to the little family at least. Wait. The Sorry. The emperor didn't bother hiding his dissatisfaction with the sixth prince. The sixth prince's consort being pregnant was a good thing, and he was very happy when he heard the news. But the sixth prince was announcing it too deliberately, and he had even dragged his consort with him when he came. How could he make his newly pregnant wife kneel to greet the emperor and force her to run around everywhere to report the news? Okay, I mean, fair, but you're not going to explain it to him like that, so he's going to get other ideas. The Sixth Prince's actions could at best be interpreted as ignorance of a new father, but at worst he was using his child to gain favor and didn't actually care for the little life that was in his princess consort's belly. Coupled with the timing of when the Sixth Prince had entered the palace, how could the Emperor not notice what his intentions was? Dabao was the smartest. What was the problem with spoiling him a little more? The Emperor coldly thought, why are you competing for my favor when your child isn't even born yet? Oh, goodness. Okay, let's just drink a little bit more tea because my throat is not working with me. I noticed that the video is jumping a bit. I hope the audio at least stays consistent. I don't mind if the visuals aren't that great, but the audio must not be an issue. If I can help it, obviously. Okay. Chapter 107 Fish Children's Friendliness. Ooh, okay. I really hope it's friendliness in the sense of like they follow in their father's footsteps and somehow accidentally sabotaging Wu Tianshao. Like, that would be amazing. Mu Tianshao sensed the emperor's coldness and retreated angrily, pulling his consort out of the palace. His consort, Liang, Liang Suyin, yeah, Liang Suyin, wanted to watch Prince Jing's children a bit longer. The elders said that one was more likely to birth a son if one looked at boys while one was pregnant. Okay. She knew that her husband was a prince, so he'd be eager for his first child to be a son. She didn't really want to go, but Mutian Shao pulled her away with a lot of strength, and she was practically dragged away. She couldn't damage the Six Princes' reputation while in Tianjin Palace, so she waited until they'd left the palace before she rubbed her wrists vigorously, complaining a bit. Before she had been married, she was dearly loved by her parents and had never suffered. After she married the sixth prince, Mutian Shao had been attentive to her every want and need, and never so much as lost his temper around her. Why was he so rough with her now that she was pregnant? Okay, thank you. Mutian Shao's face was dark and unreadable. After his consort complained a bit, he came back to his senses and returned to his usual gentle, considerate self. He said apologetically, I'm sorry, I got too excited. I forgot that you need to be treated with special care now. I mean, I feel like she doesn't have to be pregnant for you to not be dragging her around to a point where her wrists are sore. Wu Tianshao was very good at concealing his emotions and lying. For a moment, Liang Xuyin thought she had made a mistake. She wanted to have a good life with him, so she smiled and said, I'm fine. There's no need to be so nervous. I was just thinking that it would be nice to have a child like Prince Jing's heir. She does not have tact, but at the same time, like, if her husband hides his emotions as much as was just implied, can you blame her for not knowing where his sore spots are? Okay. When Mutian Shao thought of the boy in the emperor's arms, the corners of his mouth, the corners of his lips twitched, and he smiled strangely. Yes, it would be nice. Mutian Shao had originally been very happy when he found out about Lady Liang's pregnancy. This child was like rain in the midst of a drought. He would soon have what Prince Jing had. Originally, he'd been trying to figure out how to subtly steal the emperor's attention from Prince Jing. When he heard that the emperor had rewarded Prince Jing's children with many things upon their arrival at the capital, Wu Tianshao thought the emperor must be getting on in age, making him more inclined to dote on his grandsons. If he informed the emperor that Lady Liang was pregnant, the emperor would have to pay attention to more than just Prince Jing's children. He had been so hopeful, but the emperor was still so cold toward him and his future child. Even worse, the emperor treated Prince Jing's eldest son much too warmly. He was just a tiny child, yet the emperor sat him on his knee. Wu Tianshao was resentful. He had always known that the emperor didn't like him because of his mother. Consort, because his mother, Consort Zhang, used to be Emperor Shaohui's servant. Ever since he could remember, the emperor never asked to see his mother, and she'd held the lowest rank of second-class attendant throughout his childhood. His mother hadn't reached consort status until he was an adult. By then, the emperor would only occasionally visit Yongfu Palace on account of the prince. Before he thought that even if the emperor didn't like him, he would at least like his children. During festivals and holidays, the emperor would summon even the Marquis of Ping and Marquis of An's children, and he sat Prince Jing's eldest son on his knee as soon as he arrived. Why was he so cold to just the sixth prince's child? Well, you see, Prince Jing has a protagonist's halo that we are not accounting for. It was clear that in the emperor's heart he was still inferior to Prince Jing, and even inferior to the second prince and third prince. Even though he brought his consort with him to announce the good news in person, it was useless. The emperor still never mentioned giving him another job. Was he really just going to spend his consort's entire pregnancy keeping her company? Oh, how horrible. Poor guy. Wu Tianshao started to hate the emperor again. Having said that though, although the trip hadn't turned out the way he expected, it wasn't fruitless. He'd been in a rush to bring his princess consort into the palace because he'd heard that Prince Jing's family was also entering the palace today. He wanted to use the opportunity to see Prince Jing's children himself. The confidant he'd sent to the western border never responded, so Mu Tianshao had given up waiting and decided that his confidant was gone. He'd most likely found something out and been silenced by Prince Jing, but Mu Tianshao didn't know the specific reason. He didn't have anyone to help him anymore, so he had to use any opportunity he got to see things for himself. And it was lucky he'd entered the palace. Though his child wasn't favored, he discovered one of Prince Jing's secrets. Prince Jing's sons didn't look like him. I think he needs glasses. From what we've heard, apparently this guy needs glasses. This man needs to get a hobby and look after his pregnant partner and stop worrying about his status. Yes. I think genuinely, I think he would be happier if he could let go of this and just live his life, because the road he's heading down is gonna lead to ruin because he's going up against a protagonist halo. I'm assuming, like, if we go through this ridiculously funny, light-hearted book and there's a tragic ending at the end waiting for us, I am gonna throw something. And it's probably not gonna be the book, because as much as I'm gonna be angry about it, I do not like damaging books. But I don't think that's gonna happen. No spoilers, but I would be shocked. Okay. Lu Sheng said they looked a lot like Prince Jing, but unless Mu Tianshao had gone blind, those were just polite comments. Since he was a couple years younger than Prince Jing, Mu Tianshao didn't know what Prince Jing had looked like as a child, so then you can't comment. Case in point. The more he thought, the more he drove himself into a corner, the more he convinced himself he must be right. Regardless of whether the male consort really did give birth to the children or not, the imperial physicians had said before that Prince Jing's children would most likely suffer from the same mute condition as Prince Jing did. But the reality Mu Tianshao saw was that none of the children were mute, and none of them looked like Prince Jing. That was suspicious. You know, genes work in this way where one thing that is apparent in one gene pool can be cancelled out by something that is apparent in a different gene pool. But I understand we're in ancient times and they were not that clued in yet. Mm. But the reality Mu Tianshao saw was that none of the children were mute and none of them looked like Prince Jing. That was suspicious. I mean, you can maybe argue, maybe, that Sabal doesn't look like Prince Jing because he's the only one that is mentioned to look a lot like Li Yi. But you'd be grasping at straws, and clearly you actually just want to get rid of Da Bao, so. The imperial physician that the emperor sent had definitely tested their legitimacy, but the western border was Prince Jing's territory. Wouldn't he get whatever results he wanted? Yes, that must be what had happened. Prince Jing knew what his muteness was, that his muteness was a disadvantage, but if he had healthy children, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Excuse you, he and his muteness has been dealing with the western border very effectively for over a year, and it has not impacted the way that he's been able to work through it. So can you just be productive on your own and maybe prove yourself instead of worrying about denigrating other people's hard work? I don't even know if I use that word correctly, which is frustrating me. But anyway, sorry, I'm so angry I lost my place. Prince Jing was determined to fight for the throne, so it was very likely that he took the risk to disguise the children as his own. As for the male consort giving birth, Mu Tianshao thought it was quite an attention-seeking strategy, or perhaps he had a bolder theory. There was one child within the four that did look a lot like the male consort. Could it be that these healthy babies were the children of the male consort and another woman, and Prince Jing had simply recorded them under his name? That's like the least sense making option, and I am starting to not make sense either, but still. If that was the case, Prince Jing truly was fearless. Mu Tianshao was certain that he'd gotten some dirt on Prince Jing. He'd used this to make a plan and hit him where it hurt. The emperor was too biased. But what would happen if he found out that the grandson he doted on wasn't Prince Jing's real offspring? He couldn't wait to see the emperor's reaction. Even Emperor Xiaohui's son wouldn't be able to recover from muddying the imperial bloodline. But what if he was wrong? Would he suffer because of his own meddling? No, not as long as he made sure they were illegitimate. Illegitimate was said in quotation marks, which makes me think he's going to orchestrate something to make sure that even if they are legitimate or can be proven to be legitimate, he's going to plant evidence that they're not. And it's so funny, he's like, is this gonna backfire on me? Surely not. When Mutin Shah thought of this, the humiliation he'd suffered earlier meant nothing. His mood improved, and he smiled, saying, I think the little heir is quite interesting. It would be nice if we could meet him again. Liang Suyun didn't know the truth. She thought the six princes just liked children. As for Li Ye, after seeing the emperor and waiting until the emperor had held the bow for an sufficiently long amount of time, he took the children to Changchun Palace. He'd been to Changchun Palace when he was a fish, but it was his first time as a human and as Prince Jing's consort. He had his guard up carefully, afraid that he would arouse suspicion by showing his familiarity with the area. After all, they were at the palace. Don't worry. Prince Jing warmly patted the back of his hand, telling him not to be nervous. Ever since they'd entered the palace, he had been with him and had never left his side. Leah followed Prince Jing, comforted. The servants at Chungchun Palace had been informed in advance that they were coming. The cloth and silk to pay homage to the late empress was laid out, and the main hall had been tidied up, candles flickering. Prince Jing lit 3 sticks of incense as usual, and the family of 6 bowed to Empress Xiaohui's tablet over and over again. The scene reminded Li Yi of the secret from Prince Jing's infancy that took place in Changchun Palace, that he had seen in the system. He had never understood the secret, and he hadn't had time to ponder it after he had his fish children. He was too busy raising them. Maybe he should take this opportunity to find time and wander around Changchun Palace. He might be able to locate the room and find some clues. He thought this was a pretty good idea. Wang Shi found 2 chairs for Prince Jing and Li Ye, and they both sat down. Sabao suddenly opened his little eyes and pointed somewhere, shouting, Ah! Li Ye looked at where the chubby hand was pointing and saw a box placed on the shelf. There was something on the box that looked like a golden pouch. That was a little strange, he thought. Why hadn't he seen that when it came in last time? But Changchun Palace had been cleaned since then, so perhaps it was originally somewhere else, and the staff had just moved it here recently. Prince Jing gazed or Prince Jing's gaze ordered Wang Shi to go over and take a look. Soon after, he brought back an old cloth tiger. Ah, tiger. This cloth tiger attracted all the children's attention, and they all started wailing. They had a lot of toys, so of course they couldn't miss out on a cloth tiger. The children all wanted the cloth tiger. Wang Shi didn't dare give it to them directly, so after he tested it with the silver needle, he cleaned off the dust on it and wiped it with the cloth a few times before handing it to Prince Jing. It could only be given to the children after Prince Jing approved. I appreciate Wang Shi's cautiousness. Because, I was slightly stressing. Maybe I can't think how that would work, but I did for a moment think, oh, did Mutian Shah put it there as the ones who aren't gravitating towards it are not actually Prince Jing's children or something stupid like that. But I think that's so ridiculous that even Mutian Shah wouldn't stoop that low. Prince Jing took the cloth tiger and glanced at it with a look of nostalgia. Li Ye had seen an older woman sewing a cloth tiger in the memory, and he had seen another cloth tiger in Emperor Xiaohui's room in the Chang'an Manor. Now there was another one. Where had it come from? Tianchi, do you have memories of this? Li Ye asked. Prince Jing nodded and showed Li Ye a stitch on the cloth tiger's tail that he had been sewn back together after it broke. Li Ye laughed. Did you play with it when you were younger? Emperor Xiaohui liked to make cloth tigers for his son, so Prince Jing must have had one. His guess was right. Prince Jing nodded again. Li Ye recalled the secret and asked, probing, Then, do you remember a wet nurse you had who was in her 30s when you were a child? Prince Jing slowly shook his head. This wasn't the first time Leah had asked this. He didn't have much hope to begin with. The prince The Prince Jing in the memory had still been an infant. He'd looked even younger than Dabao and the others, so how could the adult Prince Jing remember? Wang Shi didn't know either. Leah had asked before and found out that Wang Shi had only begun accompanying Prince Jing after Emperor Shaohui passed away. Wang Gonggong did know a wet nurse who had served Prince Jing before, but that wet nurse was tall and strong, which didn't match the wet nurse in the memory. However, Leah assumed a prince would have several wet nurses and concluded that the one he saw in memory was only one of them. Unfortunately, neither Wang Shi nor the other wet nurses knew anything about her. He wouldn't have to ask head eunuch Law, right? After much thought, Leah decided that this was the only other person he could ask, but would head eunuch Law help him? Fair question, I guess. Prince Jing looked over the cloth tiger, squeezed it, and after determining that nothing was wrong with it, put it in Sabao's hand. Sabao held the cloth tiger that Daddy Prince Jing gave him and yelled in happiness. But soon the other three children targeted him. Dabao, Erbao, and Sanbao all yelled, "Ah! Everyone who saw it gets to share." Sabao wasn't having it. Daddy Prince Jing gave him this toy. It was only Sabao's. Sabao put the cloth tiger under his arm. He could roll and sit, but he couldn't walk yet, so he rolled on the spot with the cloth tiger in his arms, planning to escape. I wonder if there's going to be something in the cloth tiger that will be like this big secret that's going to be found out because they accidentally tear the cloth tiger apart. But then Prince Jing squeezing it, surely he would have felt that, so suddenly it doesn't feel likely at all. Dabao, Erbao, and Sanbao quickly blocked Sabao with their round little bodies. When Sabao stopped rolling, Erbao grabbed the cloth tiger's tail, Dabao and Sanbao each grabbed the tiger's leg, and Sabao held the tiger's head. Nobody was willing to let go. After a short stalemate, a ripping sound was heard. The cloth tiger was quite old and had been ripped once before, so it was easy for it to get torn in the children's scuffle. Dabao, Erbao, and Sanbao were dazed and quickly let go of the toy. Sabao grabbed the broken tiger, his lips trembling, wanting to cry. Leo almost cried himself from laughter. He rushed forward to hold Sabao, who buried his head in his fish father's arms and sobbed. Heartbroken, Leah gently patted his back, whispering a few words of comfort and looking at the cloth tiger in Sabao's hand. It was in pretty bad condition. Leah furtively glanced at Prince Jing. He was also smiling, not upset at all. Leah asked for the toy, pretending to look at it, and softly said, "Don't cry, Sabao. It'll be back how it was once we sew it up." Sabao blinked his tear-filled eyes, confused. Leah mimed sewing to show him what he meant, and opened up the cloth tiger. But as he did, he noticed the words "Puliu" embroidered into the tiger's lining. His heart skipped a beat. Why were the words embroidered inside? The cloth tiger had been Prince Jing's toy when he was a child, so it couldn't be anything like a love token, but it looked a little like the label on modern clothes. Was the label a name? The person who'd made the cloth tiger? As Leo was thinking, Sabao started getting anxious, waiting for him to speak again, and pulled on his sleeve. Leo returned to his senses and went back to comforting Sabao. 15 minutes later, Sabao was asleep in his fish father's arms, with tears in his eyelashes. He had finally quieted down. Leah had to strike while the iron was hot and teach the little troublemakers to show love and respect as good brothers should. The Bao knew he'd misbehaved. He sat, ramrod straight, clasping his hands together and asking for forgiveness like an adult. Erbao and Sanbao looked at each other, took off each other's pants, exposing their little butts, and each asked their fish dad to spank the other one. Leah had to hold in a laugh. So ridiculous. Okay, we're at the end of the chapter. I was having to resist so hard because my eyes kept wanting to drift to the final line of the chapter because I was very scared there was going to be a spoiler there, and luckily there at the end of the day wasn't, but the temptation was strong. But yeah, we are currently on page 317, chapter 108, Fishy Education. So I think we should be able to finish quite easily in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, we'll also just kind of have to play it by ear, see how things go, because if there are too few pages left by the time we reach the end of next week, then I might just stretch out that live stream into 3 hours and then take 1 week off maybe, or something like that. But yeah, we'll see when we get there. I hope you guys still enjoyed it. Thank you for noting that, Katie. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. 再见。